Welcome to the Prepper Almanac. In this video, we are going to discuss 35 long shelf life foods a prepper should stockpile. It always pays to be prepared. And preppers know this. Whether you're stocking up for a rough storm season, an unforeseen disaster, or just because you want to buy them bulk and save a little bit of extra cash, keeping your pantry padded with all the necessities you need for cooking is a good idea. But not all foods are capable of going the distance. Sometimes, you'll only get a week or maybe a month out of food, even prepackaged foods. 1. Instant coffee, 10 plus years. It's tough to imagine going without coffee in the morning, and for some of us, it might be tougher to imagine having to live on instant coffee. It doesn't hold a candle to the fresh ground stuff, but instant coffee is specially treated for a very long shelf life so long as it stays in that little factory vacuum-packed brick. Left sealed, it should last at least a decade. 2. Tea, 2 years in individual packets. If you aren't a coffee drinker, or just want something with a little less caffeine, tea is probably going to give you your fix. Now, tea leaves by themselves can actually lose a lot of flavor and get stale if exposed to moisture and light, but once again, if you keep them in a factory sealed package, and preferably those individual foil wrappers around each tea bag, it will go the distance, keeping its flavor for a couple of years. 3. Salt, indefinite. Salt is essential for pretty much everything you might do in the kitchen, no matter the recipe and no matter how you're preparing it. Salt can also be beneficial for certain cleaning tasks, so you'll want to have plenty on hand. 4. Sugar, indefinite, will clump around 2 years. Sugar is nearly as important as salt is, and I know that most of us can't go more than a day without using a cup here and a pinch there in the kitchen. Also, like salt, it lasts forever so long as it isn't contaminated. But sugar is highly attractive to pests, and if it gets moist you'll have problems, so keeping it in an airtight, sturdy package is critical, not a bag. 5. Flour, 6 months, 1 year. Flour is probably the most fundamental staple you'll use in the kitchen. Depending on the variety, be it wheat, whole grain, all-purpose, bread or some other, you can get at least 6 months out of your flour in the pantry, and if you keep it in a tightly sealed container, you'll likely get closer to 1 year. 6. Cocoa powder, 20 years, if sealed. Cocoa powder isn't something that we reach for every day, but it is incredibly versatile, and considering how little sugar it contains, it has a surprisingly long shelf life. Whether you want to crank out some homemade hot cocoa or a delicious dessert, cocoa powder is perfect, and if kept sealed it can, believe it or not, can last a couple of decades. 7. Cornstarch, 10 years. Cornstarch is another staple that's indispensable for all kinds of different recipes. Properly stored, it can last at least 10 years and potentially longer, but the trick is it must be stored properly. Keep it very cool, sealed and out of direct sunlight. 8. Maple syrup, 10 years. More than chocolate and more than any other sweet treat, I absolutely love maple syrup. It's hard to believe that the real thing is as good as it is and entirely natural. 9. Corn syrup, 20 years. Corn syrup is something of a dirty word these days because lots of folks suspect it's linked to all sorts of insidious health problems and obesity, even more so than sugar. Nonetheless, it is a totally viable sweetener, and more importantly for our purposes, almost completely shelf stable. 10. Honey, indefinite. If sealed and cool, there was hardly a more marvelous or miraculous food than honey. All natural, and requiring hardly any processing to make it ready to eat, so long as you can keep it in a sealed container and protect it from moisture, honey basically won't ever spoil. 11. Olive oil, 18 months. One of the most used basics in any kitchen. And, as most of us know, it can and will go rancid. But what you might not know is that this is only really a problem with an open bottle. A sealed bottle of olive oil can easily last longer than a year, and usually a lot closer to 18 months before there's any worry of spoilage. 12. Dried spices, 18 months. Spices and other aromatics give the meals we make their essential character, and so long as they are dried and preferably sealed, spices will last a long time indeed before they are totally devoid of flavor. They basically don't spoil. Expect any factory sealed bottle of spices to last at least a year and a half, and you can even package your own if you can vacuum seal them to protect them from moisture. 13. Butter flakes, 2 years. Butter definitely has a shelf life, particularly when it isn't refrigerated, but these dehydrated bits of butter make a good substitute that's safe and shelf stable for a long time in the pantry. 14. Instant potatoes, indefinite. If sealed, instant potatoes are another mainstay in my long shelf life pantry, and they should be in yours also. They're convenient, quick, and once you learn how to make them right, surprisingly good if you don't have the genuine article on hand. 15. Powdered milk, 2+ years, if sealed. Powdered milk is another ace in the hole that I keep on hand as an emergency item, and as an infrequent addition to certain recipes. This is sort of an all or nothing inclusion. Once you break the seal on the package, you've generally only got about 30 days until it starts to clump up, spoil, and get moldy. 16. Soup mix. 2+ years dried soup mixes are a great way to add variety to your pantry, and they do double duty both as an entree or side, and as ready-made flavoring mixes for other recipes. 17. Bouillon cubes. 2+ years bouillon cubes are a great accompaniment to the soup mixes I just mentioned. They pack concentrated flavor in tiny little bricks that hardly take up any room at all, and left in their factory packaging, it will be many years before they spoil. But, as expected, they're incredibly vulnerable to moisture, so if the package gets damaged or they're in a humid environment they won't last. 18. Dried pasta. 2+ years dried pasta is one of the very best items to keep in your pantry. Super versatile, easy to prepare, and can be used in countless recipes and in many different ways. Plus, it is calorie dense and it fills you up. 19. Dried beans. 10+ years beans are a mainstay food around the world, and with good reason. They are filling, a great source of protein, and they have an excellent nutritional profile of vitamins and minerals. Dried beans, as long as you can keep them safe from moisture and pests, can last decades. 20. Seeds. 1 year. Seeds are a great way to add interest, flavor, and nutrition to a variety of dishes, and many kinds of seeds even make a great snack, like sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds. Seeds contain fats and oils that will go rancid in time, but if you can keep them in the dark, keep them cool and dry, they will last at least a year. 21. Jerky. 6 months or longer. Dried, seasoned meat in the form of jerky has been a reliable and reasonably tasty snack since pretty much forever. You can make it out of pretty much any kind of meat yourself, or buy it from the store in a plastic bag that will keep for many months on end without spoiling. 22. MREs. 3 years at room temp. For pretty much everyone that served in the military, these are hated, but you can't cover up the fact that MREs really do last for a long time in storage. These complete, high-calorie meals are, as the name suggests, ready to eat right out of the package. Kept at room temperature, they will last at least 3 years in storage. 23. FreezeDried Foods. 10+ years compared to every other kind of food storage. FreezeDried Foods last the longest and maintain the best quality. Freeze-dried foods can easily last a decade and potentially much longer. 24. Dried fruit. 6 months. Dried fruit is another ancient staple when it comes to great shelf life. Properly dried using a dehydrator or even the power of the sun alone, your fruit can last many months if it is kept cool and dry in a good container. 25. Popcorn. 5 years. Sealed popcorn is a wonderful snack, a good source of calories, and a surprisingly good source of various minerals. 26. Canned food. 2 years on average. You know it, you love it. Whether it is vegetables, fruits, meats, broth, or something else, most types of canned food will last a lot longer than the sell-by date on the label suggests. 27. Spam. 1 year spam is almost a punchline. Some people hate it so much, but you shouldn't overlook this delicious canned ham. 28. Vinegar. 5+ years. Vinegar is not something you probably want to drink on its own, but you've got to have it in the kitchen if you do any amount of cooking. Most kinds of vinegar will last for months even after they have been opened, and if you keep the bottles sealed they will last for years. 29. Liquor. Indefinite. As most of us already know, liquor can keep for ages and remain completely safe to drink. 30. Wine. Indefinite. Wine will also last indefinitely if properly stored and not contaminated. Wine is also notable for generally improving in quality over time, so don't be afraid to put back some bottles of your favorite. 31. White rice. 25+ years. White rice is another global staple capable of lasting for a very long time in storage, so long as it's protected from pests, kept cool, dry, and away from. 32. Oats. 10 years. Oats are one of the very best whole grains you can keep in a pantry long term. Delicious, nutrient dense, and a great source of energy. If you keep them in a vacuum sealed container, your oats will last for at least 10 years. 33. Barley. 5 years. Barley is also a great candidate among cereal grains for long-term storage. Keep it cool, dry, and sealed, and you can get at least 5 years out of barley, and probably a lot longer. 34. Wheat. 10+ years. Wheat isn't as tasty or desirable as some of the other grains we've covered, but it's a reliable standby the world over for a very good reason. Proper storage will get you a shelf life measured in decades. 35. Quinoa, 3 to 5 years. Quinoa is one of the very best grains, actually a seed, you can eat, and one of the very few vegetarian proteins that is nearly complete, nutritionally speaking. Conclusion. As we wrap up today's video, if you have any questions or if there are any topics that you would like discussed in the future, let us know in the comments section below. And be sure to subscribe to the channel to learn more about prepping and share the video with others that may have a passion for prepping or are curious about prepping in general. And lastly, we have put some links to some prepper supplies that you might want to check out in the description below. Thanks for watching the Prepper Almanac.